Okay, the learning target for today's lesson is I can explain the difference between author's purpose, point of view, and perspective. So at the end of the lesson today, I want you to be able to tell me the difference between author's purpose, what that means, what point of view means for nonfiction, and what perspective means in nonfiction. Okay? So let's talk about author's purpose first. It is the way it sounds. It's the purpose, the reason why someone writes something. It's why an author wrote a text. That's the definition, okay? When you write something, you have a purpose. Sometimes it's an assignment and you have to write it, but a lot of times you just want to write something. Maybe you're trying to give someone directions to your house. Maybe you're trying to persuade someone to do something with you. Maybe you are just trying to express yourself creatively through poetry. Those are all reasons you write. And in elementary school, you may have learned it with the acronym PIE, P-I-E. Most writing is either to persuade others to think a certain way or to do something. Think about Dr. King's speech. His speech was all persuasive, trying to get everyone to agree with him in his I Have a Dream speech. And what he was speaking for that day at the Civil Rights, at the March on Washington. Sometimes authors write just to inform, like the articles of the week that we've been reading. They've been mainly informational. Last week, the Halloween history, for example, that was just informational about the history of Halloween, just facts. And a lot of times authors write to entertain, and that's mainly going to be like your novels, short stories, movie scripts, that sort of thing. So for nonfiction, most of the time, we're going to be working with the P and the I, to persuade and inform. But that's elementary school, and I just want you to be aware of there's more than just PIE. There's more than just those three reasons why authors write. Sometimes they're demonstrating something. They have to explain something in a way that's more of a demonstration. Sometimes they're comparing some things, or they're contrasting, showing the differences among things. Sometimes they're arguing, which is a lot like being persuasive, but they have something they're trying to prove. Sometimes they want to just describe something. Sometimes they're encouraging someone or the audience of their text. Or sometimes they're advocating, they're speaking for someone. Sometimes they're just celebrating something. And maybe they're also challenging you, the reader, to act in a certain way or to do something. So it's more than just PIE. There's more examples of author's purpose. But just remember, it's why an author wrote a text. And PIE is an easy way to remember that. So author's perspective, that's just how an author feels about the topic that they wrote about. It's a lot like mood when we talked about fiction, when you have a feeling, but this is different. This is how the author feels about the topic they wrote about. And I like to use my wheel of feels, which, I've got that on my board. I think it's hidden behind an anchor chart right now, but here's a copy of it. And think about the text that you read recently, the bullying article. Well, the topic is bullying, and think about how the author feels about bullying. And if you look in the center pie pieces, those different colored pie pieces, I see the gray piece that says disgusted. And I think that's probably the best match for this article. And if you move out, you can see some more specific words: disapproving, disappointed, awful, or repelled. All of those would work. I would probably pick more of disapproving for this article. The author disapproves of bullying. That's the author's perspective. That's the feeling the author has about the topic, perspective. Sometimes we call this tone. It's the same thing, perspective and tone. And your teachers in the future will probably use both of these words. So I wanted to make sure you understand perspective and tone, which is just the feeling the author has about the topic. And then point of view is really easy for nonfiction. It's called objective. We don't have a bunch of different choices like with fiction. Objective means there's no feelings, there's no opinions, it's just the facts. Think about a newspaper reporter. Their job is to report the facts. They're not supposed to give you their opinion or their feelings about what they're reporting. There's no narrator involved in nonfiction, so it's just kind of just the facts. So we have point of view, that's objective. We have perspective, that's how the author feels about the topic, that's the perspective. And then we have the purpose, it's the why an author wrote a text, the reason. And we can remember that with PIE, P-I-E, persuade, inform, and entertain. So today you're going to practice thinking about these terms as you're reading an article at Newsela. And I have given you 3 choices. You only have to do one. And what you're going to do is you're going to pick the one that you're most interested in. And I'm just going to pick one. I'm going to pretend like you're picking this one. More teens talking to their parents about being cyberbullied, poll finds. That's the title of the article. And what you're going to do is you're going to read the article. And I want you to know that when you're reading these articles, you can change how difficult the reading is by picking a different lexile. So if you think it's too hard and you want to bring it down a little bit, you can go to an 840, or you can go even lower, and it makes it a little bit easier to read. So you're going to read the article. They're not too long, okay? And then you're going to do the activities. I would suggest doing the quiz first, okay? And there's usually 4 questions. And then I want you to answer my questions here in the right part. I want you to write an objective summary of the article. You're doing very well with this, just extra practice. Then I want you to explain the author's purpose. Was it to persuade, inform, or entertain, and explain why? If you want to use the Wheel of Feels to get it more specific, you certainly can, but if you want to just stick with PIE, that's fine too. And then I want you to tell me what's the author's perspective. That's where you're going to actually use the Wheel of Feels. If that's something that you want to look at, I will include that in your Google Classroom assignment today so that you can find some really good specific words that show how the author feels about the topic. So when you're done with that, I will get the results through Newsela, and you can move on to the next part of your workshop assignment.